speaking of Man City, good
Segue.
transition there. Nice segue, yes. Man City defeated Arsenal 1-0 on a goal by Raheem Sterling. Are we looking at the back end of Manchester City? Like, they've lost a few really, really bad games here lately, and now squeaking out a win against Arsenal. Are we looking at Manchester City was dominant for a while in the Premier League? Are we looking at the back end, and how much longer do we think Man City's going to have to try and get another league title?
I actually think, the old phrase goes, classic saying, tales of our demise have been grossly exaggerated, so to speak, or somewhere along those lines. Manchester City are still a high-quality football team, high-powered offense. A lot of it comes down to injury proneness. With Sergio Aguero coming back into the game, you could see the quality. I know he only played for about 35 minutes or so, but you could see the quality, the link-up play. When you've got players like De Bruyne, you're always going to do well. Manchester City are the one big team that went out and tried to address their defensive capabilities as well. They went out and spent good money, bought a lad from Benfica. His name avoids me right now. It is
Fernand Torres?
Yes, yeah. They went out and bought him. I think that's good money. That's money well spent. He's physical. He's also an incredible passer of the ball. One thing I've noticed is that it's ironic because I'm going to make a little bit of an argument against it. But to be a good defender in this league, you also have to be quite athletic now. It's not, it's not the old days where you could just have two big old lumps like Aeron and Adams kicking the shite out of you. You've really got to dig in. For me, Manchester City are always going to compete. They've got the money, they've got the quality, and if they don't have the quality, they'll just ship it out and they'll get someone else in who can do it. Pep Guardiola, for me, has always been slightly overrated. That's going to upset an army of people. For me, he's always been let's be honest, right? You got a billionaire's checkbook at your disposal. You're always in a position, when he was at Barca, he had Xavi and Iniesta and Lionel Messi and Sanchez and everything he could imagine at his disposal. You better win the Spanish League with that sunshine. Then he goes to Bayern Munich and he can't win the Champions League with them, but Jupp Heynckes could, because Jupp Heynckes wanted to play more offensive football. As a massive Bayern fan, love my German football, as we'll find out a little bit later. For me, that was a league where you realise that although Guardiola is no question a world-class manager, still for me, slightly overrated. I look to the great managers. I think, what makes you an all-time great manager? It's not getting the best out of the world's best players. Getting the best out of players that may not necessarily, obviously Ranieri isn't the greatest manager of all time, but what he was able to do with the Leicester side, some of those players have not reached those heights since, although Leicester, especially under Brendan Rodgers, seem to have really stabilised themselves quite nicely, although they're slipping as well a little bit. This looks to be a little bit of an open season right now, which is nice. For me, I would have Man City as favourites to win the title. For me, I honestly think, I look at the quality they got. I think Raheem Sterling, woefully underappreciated as a footballer and really underappreciated as a talent and a person as well. He pops a lot of grief. There was a lot of nonsense involved. And, I'm just going to come out and say it. It'd be interesting to see how much grief he'd be getting if he was white, frankly. There is still a lot of embedded racism in football. I'm not stupid enough to pretend it's not there just because everybody's taken a knee, which, of course, I'm very grateful for. Let's be honest, it's Colin Kaepernick who started that in the American football, in the NFL for the San Francisco 49ers. And ever since, the floodgates they've only really just started opening. It feels like Kaepernick has had to spend a lot of time to get his redemption in that regard. But that's for the NFL podcast, which I'm looking forward to recording later. But for me, I think Man City are credible. I don't think Arsenal play that badly. I think Arsenal play good football. I think they're very solid. The one critique I have of Arsenal, anyone who knows me, particularly my brother Steve, will no doubt watch this and he'll be screaming at me if I don't praise Arsenal enough. But I used to be a very big Arsenal fan. I used to have a season ticket and everything. I used to go to a lot of games, particularly under the Wenger era, and then I chose to kind of move away from that and just support the local team full time, who I've always had a lot of passion for anyway, and now I just follow that because I got very disenchanted with the quality and the commitment that was involved with being a high-tier football fan. Probably a lot easier for you being in the States. You're not as emotionally connected. You're not spending the average football fan, if you're going to home and away games in the Premier League, you can average, including travel, food, petrol, everything that goes with that, you can average £4,000 to £5,000 a year following your football team alone. And for people who have mortgages, jobs, families, kids to be, things like that. It's not an easy prospect. And if I couldn't handle that as a single man, God forbid how difficult that is for people who have had their season tickets for no end. And of course, Arsenal as well, the most expensive season ticket in Europe. I think their most expensive season ticket, if you don't include their VIP club level membership, somewhere around £1,800 a year, which is, ridiculous for 19 home games. It's obscene, but that's, we could do a podcast based on the finances. We always know that's going to be an issue. All of these things lend themselves to why I stopped going to see it. And to be honest, it costs a lot less for me to chill out at home, watch these guys, and then go and watch my local football. It's as simple as that. And I've always loved my local team anyway. And frankly, we've done pretty well for ourselves, so I'm okay with that. But the one thing that really bugs me about Arsenal, I think they're better under Arteta than they were Unai Emery, excuse me. Big fan of Emery because I love Sevilla in Spain. That's kind of my Spanish team, so I follow them pretty religiously. Have done for the best part of 13 years now. But Emery just didn't click, didn't seem to have the trust of the players. Arteta does, and a lot of that might have to do with the fact that he was the assistant coach of Manchester City for 3.5 years. He worked under Guardiola as well, so he understands that system. Arsenal came to play. I thought they put in a good shift. I think Sacco is fantastic. I think he could really unlock some serious potential for Arsenal going forward. Pepe is a fantastic pickup as well. And I think we're only scratching the surface of what he can do. When they lost to Liverpool earlier in the season 3-1, Pepe was a really, really high quality force in that game. And the only thing I would suggest with him is maybe a little bit more, being a little bit more clinical going forward when he has opportunities. He needs to put the ball away a lot more. Same with Sacco, to be fair. That being said, Man City played very well in defence. They, put in a real shift, made some good saves from Arsenal's front line. And again, the problem for Arsenal for me is when it comes to the back line, it's tougher than it was. It's still not strong enough. And it's still too dainty. It's too fancy. And that annoys me a little bit. I like a bit of physicality. Look at Virgil van Dijk or Vincent Kompany, the sort of premier centre-backs that we've had over the years. Although they are great footballers, they're still big, physical, powerful men. They can win headers. They can muscle people off the ball. You have to do that as a centre-half. And we've gone away from tough left and right back. We don't have the left back, right back per se anymore. We have wing backs. We have full backs, so to speak. And these guys normally will be counter-attacking premise. And I understand with Arsenal playing a counter-attacking style of football, they need someone like Kieran Tierney or Freddie Mercury, aka Bellerin, who's got this ridiculous tash going on. Just not feeling it, bruv. Just get a full beard or just shave it off. You look ridiculous, man. And
That's great.
I know the Arsenal fans are going to come to me. Arsenal TV's going to be, nah, fam, what are you talking about? But, come on. Terrible. But these guys, they're so fucking weak in the tackle. And that really frustrates me as a football fan. Because obviously, as a neutral, and, with my past, I'm always going to love watching Arsenal's brand of football. Because they play great football. They've got exciting footballers. And another thing, when Aubameyang isn't firing, they really struggle to get goals. And that's going to be an issue because that's where you need Pepe, Sacco to come in. I think they really should have gone out and strengthened. They could really do with offloading Ozil, obviously. There's people on that payroll. That money could go to much better players, much stronger players.
David Luiz would go out of there.
Yeah, for me, the biggest problem is their defence. I actually think their goalkeeper, I think he's fantastic. I think it's Bernd Leno.
Yeah,
not Jay Leno, ladies and gentlemen, Bernd Leno. Although you could imagine Jay Leno playing goal with a head his size. Actually, he could be he reminds me a little bit of Steve Bruce. Actually, I don't know why that is. Maybe they haven't been seen in the same room for a reason. There you go.
A little bit.
I've seen it. Jay Leno and Steve Bruce, mate, and they were separated at birth. But for me,
Jesus,
hey, we've got to appeal to the American audience as
well.
Right,
Absolutely.
Exactly. I can't do a Jay Leno impression. Sorry, I can do a Trump impression, but we'll save that for later.
Can't. No.
No, that sounds more like Woody the
Woodpecker.
But yeah, the thing with me, once again, it's the defence. David Luiz, come on, man. As a Chelsea fan, you're probably not losing much sleep that David Luiz was shipped out. I
was happy.
Sideshow Bob is in
for
the defence.
So much. David Luiz put in a good shift with Chelsea for the 2 times that he was there. He could, he was our specialist, take that free kick and just rocket it into the freaking top corner. Mm-hmm. But his defense was so woeful, it was ridiculous.
He's not a defender, is he? You know, because he's
he
Brazilian.
would be more of like a midfielder. He'd be more midfield in my eyes because he plays more midfield rather than defense.
Well, I'll tell you what David Luiz is. David Luiz is the classic case of a kid who always wanted to play up front but was forced to play in defence because his parents didn't believe in him enough. That's how it feels when I watch David Luiz. He looks like a player. It's like, I want to play in up front, and Mikel Arteta's like, oh no, you don't, get in fucking defence, mate. And he's just like, I don't wanna. And he's like, he's not that good. I'm sorry, he's just not that good. He can't defend for shit. You'd think. It's funny, like, I can't believe he can even head the ball with that hair. You know, he looks like Sideshow Bob in human form, which is fine. He
reminds me of him and Marouane Fellaini. Could be like the Afro twins.
Well, yeah, it looks like Marouane Fellaini and Jason Lee, the famous Nottingham Forest player with the pineapple for a haircut. Looks like those two had a baby, and out popped David Luiz, who doesn't really know what position or who his real father is. David Luiz, for me, not great, with all due respect. Gabriel looks good. Physical,
Gabriel does look
a little bit better, but you can't build a defence on one guy. Kieran Tierney came from Celtic. Now, with all due respect, the Scottish League, although can be quite physical, which surprises me, he's a winger posing as a left back. Same with Aeron. And Aeron has great, but the problem with someone like Hector Bellerin as well is the more that he loses his pace, the more he's going to lose his ability as a footballer. Because without his pace, he's not going to be able to track back and make challenges. I don't think he's strong enough in the tackle, personally. I certainly don't think Kieran Tierney is either. We're finding defenders are at an extreme premium, particularly in this country. You've got to go further afield. Man City had to go to Portugal to pick up one. For some reason, as the game becomes more and more, shall we say, sensitive, less physical, more athletic, which is a good thing, that means that it's much harder to be a good defender. You can't just be a big lump. You can't be a static, you can't be a Christopher Samba from Blackburn from back in the day. Those kind of guys are becoming a little bit ineffective. Fulham are finding that out with Ream at the back, which I really want to talk about as well. And for me, Arsenal, they're going to have to dig deep. They're going to have to pull out a lot of money, whatever it takes. And their scouts are going to have to say, right, we need these defenders to make this. Because I think if their defence is rock solid, they're a very credible and dangerous team. I really do. But without that, look at every Premier League title-winning team. Not a single one of them had a back four that wasn't credible. You have to have a back four and a world-class goalkeeper to be credible. And if you do not, you won't win a league title. It's as simple as that. That being said, Arsenal play good football, always going to have an opportunity, particularly in cup tournaments. They do so well in the FA Cup because of that. You wouldn't put it against them winning in the FA Cup or the League Cup again, something along those lines. Yeah, you say that. You say that, but, silverware. And ultimately, Chelsea lose to Arsenal a lot in the FA Cup, which is always fun for us.
Yeah.
For me, it's not same old with Arsenal. Because this is definitely a game they would have lost 4 or 5-0 in the back end of the days of Wenger. I think they're definitely more organised. I think Arteta's got fire in them. They're willing to get into the tackle more. They're willing to get dirtier, which I like. But they still need more physicality and more strength in the back four to be a viable contender. So, that's pretty much it for this game.
Arsenal, when they went out, they got Willian on a free from Chelsea, obviously, and then they got Gabriel.
That's a good pickup. I'm surprised that Willian, obviously, for a free, he's going to go, but I actually think that's a really good pickup because if there's one thing Arsenal does do very well, it's recycle players who have been a little bit stagnant or a little bit quieter. Because Willian, in his prime, you could argue he may have already crossed over, but he's still got a lot of pace, a lot of quality in the past, and he's the kind of player who will fit Mikel Arteta's philosophy on how to play good football going forward.
Another one that reminds me like that is Cesc Fabregas.
Yeah, he went the other way. Yeah, which, at the time as an Arsenal fan was, sacrilege. Same with actually God. It's very strange because for the longest time, it felt like Chelsea were kind of pilfering all of Arsenal's talent. And now Arsenal are trying to do the same. But the problem is that Arsenal aren't picking, David Luiz isn't quite Ashley Cole, mate. It's one of those things. Sorry.
Jesus, no, not Ashley.
It's what it is. He's not exactly Sol Campbell, is he? Let's be fair.
No.
But the one thing I will say as well about Arsenal, this is now the 29th game straight, I believe, that they have lost away to a top 6 team all the way back since 2015. So every time they've gone away to a top 6 team, they've either lost or drawn, but they haven't won a single game against top 6 opposition away since 2015 when they beat Manchester City. That's telling. If you can't beat the top 6, you're going to be in trouble. And I know there's been some transitional periods with managers and things like that getting away from the Wenger era, and it was always going to be difficult, and they weren't always going to be top 4. But the ironic thing is, what do fans rag on Arsenal for the most? Oh, top 4 is not a trophy. And now they're not making top 4 regularly. All of a sudden, now we're expecting them to be, and now we're mocking them for not. So you can't really have it both ways.
Exactly.
As we're going to find out with some of these other teams, Arsenal, because of how good they were, and because of how they changed the game in the mid-2000s, they're susceptible to a lot more pressure, a lot more media pressure especially, and a lot more abuse from opposition fans than other teams would be, simply because people were very jealous of that Arsenal team. And now that they're kind of, not... they haven't really contended for the league title since, I'd say, 2007, 2008, when they ultimately ended up finishing third, I believe, and I think Chelsea came second that year. I'm not mistaken, by 2 points, which must have hurt. But ultimately, sorry, mate. But yeah,
no, you're good. You're good.
But it's one of those things where, it's been 12 years since I would honestly say Arsenal have legitimately come close to contending for a title.
Oh, yeah.
And so at this point, why are we still expecting them or, taking great pleasure in them losing? I think at some point you've got to say, do you know what? They're a good footballing side. Are they going to challenge for a title? Probably not right now with the team they have, but they're very competitive and they're making a good go of it. And even at Anfield, where they lost 3-1 to, at the time, I know it was only a few weeks ago, but Liverpool are considered one of the best teams in the world. And Arsenal went in there. They weren't afraid of anything that was put in front of them like they would have been. And you just know, 5 or 6 years ago under Wenger, they would have completely capitulated and lost that game 8 or 9-2. It would have been ridiculous. And instead, they dug in deep. And even though they're under a lot of pressure from Liverpool, or a high possession football team, they really stuck at it. So I think Arsenal deserve a little bit of credit for working hard. That being said, they did still lose this game, but I don't think there's really any kind of malice or any kind of fear in losing 1-0 to a Manchester City team at Manchester City. I know the home kind of advantage has been taken away a bit with fans, but still. But like I say, it's that telling statistic. They cannot continue to keep losing away games to the top 6. That's not going to happen. There are 2 other things as well that stood out, and I wanted to mention these because I'm curious about your opinion on one. I did have one more stat as well. Obviously, Ederson's in goal for Manchester City. He's kept 53 clean sheets since he debuted on August 2017. That's 15 more than any other goalkeeper in that entire time. And when you think about that, if a goalkeeper is going to keep that many clean sheets over that amount of time, you're always going to be in with a shout of winning. You're always going to be in with a shout. Clean sheets. Look back at Petr Cech when he was in goal for Chelsea. The amount of clean sheets he made. He went on this crazy run where, at home games especially, he just wouldn't concede goals because he was just so good, and also the back 4 in front of him. And that's something that's really going to help Manchester City. For me, I believe they've got the best goalkeeper in the league in Ederson. And I think that with his overall run of work and the way that other goalkeepers like David De Gea, Mignolet, anyone like that, I like Jordan Pickford, for instance, but he concedes too many goals for me to be the best goalkeeper in the league. He's definitely England's best goalkeeper, which is why he starts for England, and rightfully so. But yeah, for me, Ederson's the best goalkeeper in the league. And that can be really telling. Clean sheets are very important. They keep up confidence. And, there's a lot of strength in Manchester City that I think people are kind of, because of the way Liverpool won so dominantly last season, I think people have forgotten how strong Manchester City are and how they're always going to keep coming back because of the finances. There was one incident in this game. I don't know if you saw it. Aguero put his hands on the female assistant, Sian Massey Ellis. So she's quite famous. She was the first female linesman, so to speak, lineswoman. They call them assistants now. Whatever. It's a lino as far as I'm concerned. And that's the slang term that we've always used for years. You Americans will catch up eventually, I'm sure, which is soccer. But There was an incident. She obviously waved the flag. I believe she said either a free kick or offside. Aguero walks up to her. Now, admittedly, it wasn't nearly as aggressive as people think. That being said, it's still unacceptable. You don't put your hands on an official. He put his hand round her neck a little bit as if to say, well, what are you doing, mate? And then kind of took it away and ran off. To her credit, she didn't make a scene about it. She didn't react badly to it. Of course, this had social media up in arms because, anything that's on social media is obviously a terrorist attack in nature, which is probably what they were thinking. So I'm surprised Aguero wasn't hauled in front of the MI6 Secret Service for his behaviour. But, you can't put your hands on the official, mate. Sorry. I don't think it's a big deal. And obviously, if it had been, I hate to say it, but if it had been a male official, people probably wouldn't have made much noise about it. And for me, you should be making noise regardless. That being said, if it was a male official, he probably wouldn't have put his hand on him for full stop. So plenty of blame to go around. Most of it aimed at Aguero. Manchester City should know better. If I'm the manager, I'll just put him aside and say, look, mate, I don't want you to touch an official, much less a female official. And, don't get me wrong, Miss Ellis is a very good-looking young lady. But, that's no excuse to put your hands on a woman. Show a bit of respect. Particularly, you're in England, mate. This is the land of the gentleman. We don't behave in such unseemly fashion.
Ever. No. Never.
What,